Camping is one of my favorite things to do, guys. It's super challenging and it's really fun in my opinion. And I've been going camping a lot recently. I've been exploring and I've been building primitive shelters, all in hopes of learning new stuff and showing you guys how to survive, showing you guys an experience of survival. And today I wanted to go over a few things I learned from my recent survival videos that you guys will enjoy hopefully, and also that you'll learn something from, because there are always ways of learning, and no matter how many YouTube videos you watch, unfortunately you can't learn it all from the internet, but you can learn a few things, or at least be somewhat cautious of them, so their effects are not as bad on you. Okay, quick side note, I'm currently just walking down the river. Been a bit of heavy rain recently, so the river's quite high. It hasn't been so bad down here, but it must have been pretty wet up on the highlands, and a lot of rain must have fell over there. Okay guys, so yeah. Now the first piece of advice that I have learned, or the first thing that I've learned really, is how crucial a fire is. A fire is the most crucial thing in the world when it comes to surviving and camping outside. I would rather be in a really crappy shelter with a roaring fire than a decent shelter but wet and cold and damp without a fire, because a fire heats everything up. It keeps everything nice and warm, and a fire is super crucial. And honestly, if it's not too cold or wet, you can just sleep outside next to a fire, no problem at all. It keeps bugs off you, it wars away and warns predators and all that kind of stuff, which is really good, and keeps you warm, cooks your food. It also disinfects any water you have, and in general it's just absolutely great and something so necessary for your survival. The water is so high at the minute. I don't know if you guys have seen, but I actually went crayfishing around this area in the summertime. It's currently it's at the end of March essentially. It's starting to warm up into spring a little bit. You can see the daffodils are coming through a little bit here. And you know, this area just completely changes in the winter. It's really cool, and I cannot wait till the summer. This is all really low water in the summertime. There's barely anything flowing through this area, because it is such a wide area compared to the rest of the river, so very little kind of depth is formed, and this is just a great spot for crayfishing, you know. When it comes to the fire as well, a crucial aspect of it is gathering enough wood to be able to spend the whole night. I overestimated how much wood will go, because I have a log burner, and a log burner, you can monitor the amount of oxygen that gets to the wood and all that kind of stuff, and you can't do that with a natural open campfire, unfortunately. So essentially the wood burnt a lot quicker than I thought. I needed more of it, and also when you're harvesting wood, it pays to get the really thick big pieces of wood. You know, it's quite hard to get. It's definitely harder than the smaller stuff, but because of its small surface area in comparison to its volume, it burns extremely slowly. If you put a lot of sticks on the fire, they burn quickly. They burn up really quickly, they start the fire well, but then you want to transition to thicker pieces of wood that'll last a longer time, because less particles of that wood is exposed to the fire, to the chemical reaction that's taking place, so it burns slower. You know, that's why you chop up wood, you increase the surface area, and it burns better. You know, that's just basic chemistry right there, and you know, you need to know it really. And yeah, it's just get more wood, definitely keeps it nice and warm. When the fire went out, I was cold, and yeah. If you also watch my other video, and I'm sure I'm displaying the video of me building it and of what I'm talking about over this recording, but I built a ring of wood around my fire, which essentially was meant to dry off the wood, was meant to make it nice and dry, so when it went on the fire it was dry, it was able to light, and it kept the fire going. This was a great idea, it was brilliant. whilst I was awake. But when I went to sleep, it turned really bad because half my wood supply was burnt, and some of the sparks from the fire, when it got a little bit too out of control, went onto my sleeping bag and burnt a hole in it. That sleeping bag is now pretty much unusable, unfortunately, but it is what it is. I'll just have to buy a new one. It was old anyway. But yeah, as you see in this video, hopefully, if I've still got it, you'll see the ring of wood. This is a great idea, great whilst you're awake. But when you're asleep, move the wood away from the fire. That's just kind of common sense, but not something that you really think of, and it's definitely worth doing. That's one of the reasons why my wood supply burnt out really quick as well. And once you actually have a decent fire going, you don't really need that dry wood. I recommend keeping a good dry supply to the side, but if wood is a little bit damp when it goes on the fire, it's genuinely no problem at all, because you know, the fire is a fire and it just burns through it, no problem at all. So yeah, it's not that big of a deal, and it's definitely not worth the risk. So keep the wood away from the fire when you go to sleep. Pretty obvious now, but yeah. Another thing that was not necessarily learned because I already knew it, but something that was reinforced when I went camping, when I built this primitive shelter in order to keep warm, keep off the ground and keep dry, is the fact that you build your shelter higher than your fire. This is important because fire burns up, smoke rises, and heat goes up as well. It also goes to the side, but smoke does not go to the side. Let me get some better lighting here, guys. There we go. Smoke does not go to the side. It goes up normally in a still day like it was. Obviously we're not encountering any harsh wind here, so that's not really too important. But if we were, we would put our shelter where the wind is kind of blocking and blowing, and make sure our shelter is not blocking in any of the smoke, because that would obviously be really bad. And yeah, just keep your fire lower than your shelter in order to essentially allow the smoke to rise, but allow the heat to still get to you. That's super important. I already knew that, luckily, but it's something that was reinforced, something that I did that really worked. The heat goes out to the side, and I actually had a black sleeping bag, which is really good. You know, if you have a black or dark sleeping bag, it's going to be way easier to get hot from a fire, because black, the color black on a material absorbs heat, whereas the color white reflects heat. That's pretty obvious, and you don't really know the degree of the effectiveness of this until you try it out, until you kind of witness it yourself. You know, I wore black clothes when I was out in the summer working, and I got freaking boiling hot, mate. I was so hot. The next day I went all in white to work, to my gardening, and a white sun hat as well, and I was, you know, good all the time. It was brilliant, and all because of the colour of the clothing that you wear, and also the colour of your sleeping bag. In this occasion, get black to absorb heat. Also, it's darker as well, which in my opinion is better. Less mud will show, and you know, it's a bit more stealthy, which is important in some aspects, you know. So yeah, keep your fire above your shelter, and maybe reconsider before buying a sleeping bag what colour to get. Path is a little blocked off here, unfortunately. This normally opens up and you can walk on this. I don't want to fall in the river again. I don't know if you guys watched my other video, but I fell in the river when I went camping. I was pretty cold then, but the fire kept me warm and I was all good, so yeah. Now, something that I also already knew, but was reinforced in one of my recent camps, was the fact that if you are wet, strip off any of them wet clothes, put them by the fire, and just walk around in whatever you are dry. This will dry off the clothes quicker, and also make you a hell of a lot warmer. You know, when I fell in that river, as you might have seen, I didn't record it actually, I just told you about it. I had to protect my camera at the end of the day. And yeah, unfortunately I fell in, and I walked around in my boxers for a while. All my stuff was dried by the fire. It dried really well, to some degree anyway. Should have had a little bit more time in front of the fire, but it started raining, and yeah, strip off any damp clothes, especially when you're going to sleep. I remember, guys, I went out on my first camp with an absolute novice camper. It was my first wild camp on my own without anybody there to help me, and he got damp from the rain. He wasn't wet, he just got damp, and he went into his sleeping bag. I told him, take off all your damp clothes, even if that means you sleep naked, because believe it or not, the sleeping bag is designed to keep you warm. You don't need anything else apart from a sleeping bag. Clothes, I do agree with in a sleeping bag, like to some degree. You definitely want some clothes in a sleeping bag. For example, I always wear my boxers and I always wear something over my skin because it just feels more comfortable against a sleeping bag. Normally I have a thermal layer on when I'm going camping, so I just keep that bad boy on when I go to sleep. And just take off any damp clothes, because you will get a hell of a lot colder than you will if you don't have them damp clothes on. Water absorbs so much energy from your skin. If you know anything about biology, you know about sweat. Okay, sweat is water that is leaked from your skin, that essentially sits on your skin, and your body has to heat that sweat up with, you know, the heat that it's generating, and then that water evaporates, taking that energy in the form of heat, in the form of that gas, in that water vapor away from your body, taking away that energy, which cools you down. And when that is put in practice, it cools you down really well. That's why you sweat, you cool down. That's the whole point. Even though your sweat is warm, you may think your sweat is warm, it's not cooling me down. Your sweat is warm because your body's heating it up, and then eventually you heat it up to the point where it evaporates off your body, or you brush it off your body with your hand or with a towel across your forehead, which takes that heat and sweat away off your body and makes you cool, takes that energy away. And that's the exact same thing that happens when you go and wear damp clothes. It takes a lot of energy out your body. You know, it takes a lot of energy to heat up water compared to its kind of properties, compared to its chemical kind of formula. It's, if you think of CO2, that's carbon dioxide. That's in the air all around us right now, and it only takes it takes a massively low number to make sure that freezes into dry ice. Okay, and when you heat that up to maybe like minus 50 degrees, it doesn't even have to be above freezing. When it heats up to minus 50 degrees or something like that, it evaporates because it has enough energy to evaporate and leave its solid form and go into a gas, okay, or into a liquid and then into a gas. And water, what it does, it's in its liquid form, and it takes a lot more energy to evaporate than oxygen or than hydrogen, because of the hydrogen bonds within it, as well as a lot more than carbon dioxide, a similar kind of compound to to water. And yeah, it takes a lot of energy. You need to be wary of that, and ultimately any damp clothes, you need to take them off 100%. Get them dried if you can, and then in the morning put damp clothes back on. It's really difficult in the morning to wake up and get out your sleeping bag, get out your goddamn warm sleeping bag that you've been in for hours, and put on damp, horrible clothes, pack up everything from the camp, wait maybe 2 hours to get home. It's horrible, it's crap, okay, but you have to do it, and that's the best way. If you do wear your damp clothes and it's only minus 2 degrees, then you could even get hypothermia, and you could, you know, die from that, because water takes up so much energy from the body, and you're no longer able to heat yourself, and your internal temperature dips down to such a low amount where you die. your bodies can't function anymore, your enzymes can't work, and you die, unfortunately. So yeah, that's all I have to say about taking off damp clothes. I know I went on a bit of a rant there, but there were a lot of science behind it, and I know that because I went to college and did science, and I also have a good interest in science. No longer in college, but yeah, it's great, man. It's great. Just take off your damp clothes, okay? 100%. Another tip that I have really is to bring some alternate ways of lighting a fire. If you only have one way of lighting a fire in one section of your bag and that gets damp and gets wet, is no longer able to work, then you're effed. You don't have a fire, and a fire brings warmth, it brings protection, it brings sterilization, it brings the ability to get rescued if you are actually in a survival situation. It brings the ability to cook food. It's a massive morale boost. It's just great in every aspect. So if you only have a couple of matches in your bag, then maybe don't do that. And also get a longer lasting and better source of fire. Something like a flint and steel, super important. You could put a flint and steel through a washing machine and sink it down to the bottom of the ocean and bring it all the way back up, and it would still work after you dried it off on your clothes a little bit. You know, it's great. But obviously lighters and matches are more convenient, and I 100% agree with the fact that you should bring them as well as backup. But sometimes they fail you, unfortunately, and you just have to be wary of that and be prepared. This would honestly be a great camping area for anybody, but unfortunately this is such a public location. Personally, I think Gainford, my local village, should do something with this massive open field area right here. You know, you could have camping here, you could have events here, you could have anything right next to the beautiful river in the summertime. It's absolutely fantastic. This is prime real estate to do something with in the summer. Have a carnival, have something, have hot dogs, you know, have, I don't know, just have something here, have a burger van here. I know it's kind of hard to get down here, but yeah. Something else that I learned as well from this camp and from these previous camps is the fact that you need to build a proper shelter. You need a lot of leaves on the shelter, and you also need desperately to get the shelter built right so that you're comfortable and you're fully inside of it. Now the shelter that I had, if it started raining in the slightest, I would get soaking wet. If it started to rain, I'd get wet, and it didn't. Luckily, I checked the weather forecast, it was all alright. It was just about -2 degrees, which is pretty cold. And yeah, not very big, not the best. Couldn't get any of my equipment in the shelter, and I just had to put it in a waterproof bag next to my sleeping area, which is not the best. And yeah, just build the shelter bigger and also build it more comfortably. My head was very up against a tree, and my neck, honestly, it was not comfortable. And if it was more comfortable, I would wake up less, I'd get a better quality sleep, I'd get more sleep, and I'd be all good. But unfortunately that did not happen. So yeah, now I know there's not very good lighting here, but I hope you can see me well enough. This is going to be the end of the video, guys. Go and watch my other camping videos if you haven't already. Thank you for sticking around this long if you have, and well, you must have if you're watching this. And yeah, I hope you learned something about this. More camping videos coming. Go and check out my other YouTube channels, loads of other content on there. Thank you, goodbye.